This lesson is all about element manipulation. Sounds like fun. We've already had a sneak peek of this in the earlier lessons where we updated some of the content on the inside of the element. We're going to be doing more of that in this lesson, as well as updating element attributes, getting attributes, setting attributes, and we've already seen the style attribute, so there's a little bit more that we're going to cover in this lesson in regards to the style attribute. So element manipulation, so we're able to set the inner HTML. So this is commonly used in order to update if you want to update the HTML of an element. If you want to update the text or the content, you could use inner text or inner content. Both are available, as well as text content. So that one is another way to update that inner content of the element. So there's a lot of different ways to make updates and use the one that's appropriate for the situation. You can also get the element object as a variable, and then you can use that and shorten your code. So we've got an example here where we're doing our selection of the element. We're selecting the one with an ID of 1, and then we're updating the inner HTML, we're updating the style color, so setting the font to red, setting style background, so background color to blue, and then updating the inner text to say test. So we're doing quite a bit of changes on that one. So you can also get the element and you can set the element ID. So one way that we were able to select the elements is via the ID. So we can get that ID value from the element. And here's an example of how we're selecting all the list items. We're looping through all the list items. We're updating the text, the inner HTML, the inner text. So we've got a bunch of stuff that we're updating. We're also updating its ID dynamically with JavaScript. So that's a really cool feature. We're updating the inner text there. We're setting an attribute, so updating its class and adding in a class of test4. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to be covering this. I'll show you how to do this. So the different methods that we're using is to get an attribute. This gives us the ability to get the element's attribute. There's an example of how we're getting the element attribute. So we're getting element by ID, and then updating, getting its attribute, and then outputting its attribute value within the console. And there's also another example, so if you can get it, you can also usually set it, so that's also the case here. So using set attribute gives you the ability to set the attribute name to hello button, and in our example, we're going to be setting the class to a value. You can also set disabled to a value as well. So there's a lot of things that you can do when you're setting attributes, as well as you can return back the attribute when you do get. You can also update an element image and a URL path. So we've got an example here. Since we can get the attribute, and the attribute for the element is the href, we can update the href with a new value. We can also get the image source and update the image source with a new value. So there's quite a lot that we can do when we're getting and setting attributes. You can also remove an element from a page by using the remove method. So selecting the element that you want to remove and then specifying remove will remove the element from the page. So there is a challenge to this lesson, of course, and the objective is to update all the list items with IDs in sequence and also content with a particular count. So we're going to take all the list items, reset or add IDs that are going to be in sequence, as well as doing list item 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're also going to get the class and output it into the console. So if the element has a class, we're going to update it into and add it into the console. So we're getting the attribute class, and we're going to output them if it does have it, so first. And then we're also going to remove the first div with the class of pick-me. So there's quite a bit to this challenge. I'll give you a sneak peek at the code, and there really isn't a lot of code in order to accomplish this. So it's just a few lines of JavaScript, and as you can see, there's quite a bit you can do with JavaScript. So pause the video, try it out, and I'll walk you through all of what we've covered in the earlier part of this lesson. So I know we had quite a bit of stuff going on in this lesson. So first of all, let's select the element as a value that we can use. So we can just do it as test, or we can call it temp element, and using document. So we're posting it into a variable object called temp. And using query selector, we're going to select the element with the h1 tag. So now we've got it within the temp object, and we could update its inner text. So Let's get it to say hello. So you see the update was done there. You can also update its inner HTML. So this will give you the ability to add HTML. So we can do a simple line break. So how about we change it to hi, hello. So now we've got HTML in there. You can see that HTML is added into that element. Let's make this a little bit bigger. There's also temp, and we had text content. So we can set the text content. So in this case, let's set it to hello world. And there's also inner text as well. So that's another option. And we'll just call it hello. So there's a few different options to update that inner content. And as you can see, the biggest difference is with the HTML. So if you want to include HTML, make sure you're using the inner HTML. And if you console directory out that temp object, and you can see that all of these values, so inner HTML is set there, inner text is set there, and just like any other object in JavaScript, we can update these values. And then also going down here, we have text content. So any value that's here within the object, we can select, we can update it, and we can manipulate it. So also going back into the console, so we've got temp, and we can return back its ID. Because again, this is an object, so there is no ID set to this particular element. So let's go ahead and set ID to temp1. And now when we go into the elements, you can see that we've got an ID of temp1 set now within the document object. So you can manipulate these element values. We can also add in classes as well. So let's create a first we'll create a class. And it'll change the text color to red. Use our JavaScript set attribute and setting the attribute class. When we refresh, we see that we've got it added in a class to that particular element. So we've got a class of red. You can also read the class value if you want by using a get attribute, and that you can get class as well. So temp get attribute, and the attribute that we want to return back is class. So you can see that the class that's been set in there is red. So you can get and set attributes. And there's also remove as well that we covered. So I know we covered quite a bit. And as you can see now, that element's been removed. So we still have temp sitting within the memory, but we've removed it from the HTML, from the DOM object. So that's an interesting effect with remove. It removes it from the visible part. We can still hold it within the memory, and we can still access it, and we can update it, manipulate it, and then eventually we can also add it back into the page, and I'll show you how to do that coming up as well. This lesson's going to be continued, so I had to break it up. So the second part coming up.